I will use that as a transition into recognizing good efforts. I have some good news, bad news. Bad news is Sarah Barnett's boss, who is a Sandler alumni, has told her she can no longer participate in our classes. It is distracting from her sales role, which I don't get. I don't understand. Sarah, unfortunately, says, best of luck to you girls. She'll miss you, but she's now required to be in other meetings at this time. And Dr. Sarah, now that she's able to see patients again, has a whole backlog of patients she's catching up with since COVID. So she will try to jump in as she can, but it's the three of us. But I'm not going to cancel this. We're going to keep doing this because you guys committed to it and I committed to it. So we're going to rock out on this. As far as rewarding good behaviors, give me some I-10s. Give me some good things that happened in your world over the last week.
You go first, Sylvia. I've been talking a lot.
It's okay. I'm trying to think. Over the last week, I think I need to look at my schedule to remember what I did last week. I had a good weekend this weekend. On Saturday, my team, another nonprofit in the area was having a virtual event, and of course, like, the purpose of it was to kind of do research and see how other nonprofits were doing it. But it was a great time with my whole team, and we don't get a lot of time outside the office together. So you got to see the goofy side and the non-work side of everybody. So that was a fun Saturday night for sure.
Good. You know, that's one thing that you'll find, especially within nonprofits. There's a really good sense of community where you may not have the same mission, or you do have the same mission, but you're open to showing best practices, sharing information. You know, Laurel, I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to friends at University of Detroit Jesuit, or reach out to people at UD Mercy at the university level. Anyone that's in Catholic education, they normally are more excited to share their successes with you because you're not a direct competitor. Even the whole Brother Rice versus CC, biggest rivalry in the state when it comes to football, I had really good friends in the advancement office over there. We always were giving each other ideas or complimenting each other, congratulating each other on certain things. So nonprofit, I mean, it doesn't happen that Ford calls up Chrysler and says, hey, we're working on the F-150. What are you guys going to do for the Ram next year? It doesn't happen. They're flat out competitors. But nonprofits, a lot of times, you're not going after the same dollars or the same mission, so there's good things there. Laurel, how about you?
Mine's about, my weekend too. I was able to spend Friday night with a couple of my girlfriends that I haven't seen in a while because of like COVID. And I live with boys, so it was really nice to like get together with them and like vent a little bit. Just chat and be dramatic.
Go for it. Yeah. If you two want to get together and leave me off this call and be dramatic, go for it.
Yeah. My friend who got married this past summer had so much wine left over, like no one drank any wine. So there was like all these big bottles of wine. So that was kind of like why we got together, was to try to put a dent in those. And we did.
Good work. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. But it was good.
Good. Well, my homeschooling last week was all over the place. My daughter survived and didn't have any traumatic injuries. Just a lot of scrapes and bloody noses and dirt and boogers, but she survived. So that's my I-10. I will teach you guys as we get deeper into the attitude, technique, behavior triangle, and our I-10, identity versus role. My role has been constantly changing, whether I'm sales coach, husband, father, homeschooler, chef, landscaper, car mechanic, den leader, lacrosse coach, lectern at church. I mean, it's never ending. I was just texting with my wife because tonight we have a PAC meeting for our Cub Scouts. I played in a golf outing yesterday for Brother Rice, good Catholic charity. Tonight was den meeting, PAC meeting. Tomorrow is a virtual den meeting. Thursday's lacrosse coach. Friday I leave for Cub Scout camping. Saturday morning is lacrosse practice. Saturday afternoon is church again. And then Sunday morning is an all-day lacrosse event. So there's no weekend anymore. There's no nights anymore. So if I focus on the old saying, be where your feet are, like I could be on this call right now with you girls, and I could be over in my Slack channel trying to plan stuff, and I wouldn't be effective. Or I could be at the Cub Scout call tonight trying to plan lacrosse for Thursday. I want to be where my feet are, and that's where my I-10 is. So when I am home with Delaney on her kindergarten call, I'm trying not to text, check messages, make work phone calls. I'm trying to be where my feet are. When I step away from that and I get into the den, I try to put on my Sandler hat and I try to be where my feet are. So as we are all wearing all these different roles and hats and identities, Laurel, as you're now taking on more with basketball, as you are now taking on more within the school, Olivia, as you transition from event to other, work with nonprofits, that was kind of my I-10 is going to the expression of being where my feet are and keeping my mind on what is at hand. Because there's always 10 more things to get to. And if I need to be working on those 10 things instead of what I'm working on, I need to stack my priorities and walk away from what I'm actively involved with and put out the fires and be where I am. So that's my I-10. In all these roles, be present when I say I'm going to be present, because it's easy for me to distract myself with all the other things. Victories, impending events, problems, anything outside of motivating people for conditioning that is a victory, an impending event, or problem, Laurel?
I think even today we were struggling really to formulate grant requests based off of our needs. Our biggest need is like COVID relief and like general support, general operation. That's what our need is. And
yeah.
I was working, as I said a couple weeks ago, to get specific programs that we that would help offset those costs. And we didn't have like a lot of success with that. But today, like me and Naomi, kind of like my manager, sat down and talked about like how can we make like work study, which is where our biggest hit is, look attractive for grant funding. And a lot of what we're doing is a big portion of our students are not working. Like 130 of them aren't like in paid jobs. Instead, they're doing like training, which to me, like now that I say it, sounds like really obvious. Like that's a program in itself, is like work study training, like training students to be prepared for jobs when they come. But it also, that money you're asking for isn't necessarily going directly like to the kids, but it's helping support the corporate work study program as a whole. So I think that big victory is like actually getting some language around our biggest need without sounding like general operation, but sounding more like a programmatic need, if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely. So as far as that being a kind of an impending event and not a problem, I'm assuming, have you kind of put together some strategy for what you and Naomi are going to do, or who you're going to go after?
So I kind of do a lot of that. I have like a whole spreadsheet of grant opportunities. And we talked about specific ones that maybe she has like connections to, or that corporate boards have connections to. So that's kind of like been in making for a while, and we keep going back to it and things like that. But they don't really have like a formal strategy on grants. Like I sent out last week or a couple weeks ago, like a huge set of like intro packets to these foundations, introducing ourselves, asking for like them to meet with us, type of thing, not asking them for money.
Yeah.
So kind of like where I started with a lot of them that don't have like online applications. The ones that do have online applications, I've been finding myself just like diving right into the applications, and we've gotten some feedback from those, but yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at, I guess.
Okay. We'll try to touch on some of that today. Olivia, how about you? Any victories, impending events, problems?
I would say a victory.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, for me, but for my team as a whole, last week through COVID, we've run low on a lot of our essential items, like our body wash and our pillows and all that stuff. And we've had so many kids coming and going. This last month, we got to the point where we had like 2 pillows up on our 3rd floor, a handful of body wash. We didn't have any sheets. And we did an ask last week for some help from our community to get some of those things, and our whole room is full. Like, the donations just flooded in and they kept coming. I mean, we have more pillows now than we know what to do with, which they'll go fast because everything goes fast and we have kids in and out. But I would say that was a huge victory for our team, but also just to see like the community, because everybody is struggling. And it just so quickly, people came together so quickly and got us the stuff we needed. So that was like so beautiful and kind of like teary-eyed to watch.
Wow. So what was the ask? Was it a social media blast? Was it phone calls to past donors? How did you guys kind of step up?
It was a social media ask, and then, you know, some personal, just asking some of our closer people. And then a lot of people would message us via social media or email and stuff saying they saw the social media ask. So pretty much just social media. So we didn't do a ton, but it worked amazingly. So
Great. Well, congratulations. That's great news.
Thank you.
Did they donate money for you to buy those things, or did they give you those?
They gave us those things.
See, that's
Yes.
that's the thing. Like, the people love going out and buying stuff to give to you. It's
Yep,
harder to find people who just want to like give you cash to go get it. You know what I'm saying?
exactly. Yes.
Really,
Yes.
really awesome.
All right. So I would like to say congratulations to that. That's fantastic. What I was going to really shift now to was today's material. And we're going to go through 2 of the big steps in the submarine today. Decision-making, the prospect's decision-making process, I think, is one of the most important things that you 2 will focus on in fundraising. A lot of times while you will be talking to a decision maker, they might have a partner in the decision. It could be a trust that has multiple family members that make the ultimate decision. It could be a wife that needs to get the spouse's buy-in. It could be a husband that needs to get the wife's buy-in. There could be multiple decision makers, and we really need to uncover up front, not just who we're asking, but what their decision-making process is. So we've talked about bonding and rapport. We've talked about the upfront contract. We've talked about discovering pain, questioning strategies. Now what we're going to jump into today, as I share my screen, is decision-making and really the steps that go into decision-making. So here's the big overview. I want you 2 to understand the importance of learning how the prospect or their organization make decisions, and that it really is more than just finding out who the decision maker is. So we're going to want to explain 2 things by the end of this that we should be reviewing at the beginning and end of each of the decision-making steps. There are 6 elements of a good decision step. We want to define those 6 elements. We want to define the possible outcomes at the end of the decision step. And we want to know the questions to ask a qualified prospect before moving forward. So if we have a qualified prospect, that means that they are willing and able and willing to invest money, that they have money to invest, but ultimately that we need to make sure that they are qualified before we actually even put a proposal in front of them. So in order to really accomplish this, what you're going to need to learn is really what is kind of involved when we're uncovering the prospect's decision-making process. We need to understand that as a salesperson, as a fundraiser, we have the right to find out why prospects make the decisions that they do. We are allowed to ask those questions. We are allowed to get that information. And then the next step is, once we've kind of actually figured out what their steps are, what do we do with that qualified prospect? And that anyone that we are talking to, whether it's us or them or multiple people, can decide whether or not to take us to the next step or whether we're going to take them to the next step. Not everyone is qualified. Not only is not everyone always qualified, not as always somebody we want to work with. Again, if they want to go way outside the box, they want to get involved in something a little goofy, we need to be able to tell them no. So the decision-making steps, this is kind of where we go to the objective of the decision-making steps, and specifically the Sandler system. This is prospect qualification processes. This is to identify the prospect's decision-making process. And understanding this process will ensure that you assess the real decision makers and successfully conclude our sale or our donation. So there are 6 specific areas of significance in the decision-making step. As we look at this slide, the decision steps, they include review of pain and budget, start information gathering with some open-ended questions, again, our questioning strategies. We want to keep the prospect talking. We want to ask questions and then not follow up with benefits and features. We want to follow up with more questions. We want to qualify or disqualify the prospect and determine whether we need additional meetings or we can actually make a decision. And then either establish an upfront contract for the next meeting or decide if we're going to make a decision at that point. So I'm going to copy and paste some of this stuff and send it to you guys in an email like I've been doing to make sure that you have all my stuff for your notes. Bear with me for 1 second. Not that, Chris. Come on. All right. So here's where it will start to make a little bit more sense for you. 6 significant decision-making steps. You've heard these terms before? God bless you. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Pretty basic, right? Writing any press release, put in the who, what, where, when, why, how. Think back to 6th grade and your teacher telling you to write a story. Who, what, where, when, why, how. This is the same stuff that you already know, that you've learned in your child state, that we're now going to apply to our decision-making process. So, who is involved in the decision-making? And what role does each person play? We need to know that up front. In your case in fundraising, the who could be an individual. The who could be an individual and a spouse. The who could be the who and multiple members of a family trust. It could be a foundation approving grants. It could be a corporation making donations. If you are dealing with somebody at a corporation, you need to know the who. Because just because they believe in the fact that they are going to submit your name for a donation, a grant, we need to know who the who's are. Is there a CFO? Is there a committee? Is it only them allowed to have access to that money, or do other people have access to that money and he needs to get, or she needs to get their approval? So who is involved in the decision making and what role does each of them play? But how is the decision made? Laurel, would you like to give me $50? You can decide whether or not you want to do that. Laurel, does your mom and dad want to invest $1,000 in our company? Well, how is this decision made? Is it you actually going to mom and dad and pitching it to them? Did they set aside $1,000 for you every year and said, Laurel, spend this however you want? The how is the decision made it needs to be asked. Do you have a partner? Do you have a spouse? And then once you figure out who the people are, then the how question is, how do you two normally make decisions? If you would ask me a question like this, I'd flat out tell you. Anne-Marie and I have a standing rule. Anything under $100, don't ask the spouse. Whether it's clothes, shoes, something for the kids, if it's under $100, don't stress. If it's over $100, let's have a conversation on it. That's how we make our decisions. She and I would then sit down together. Next step, what are the specific steps of the decision process? Again, if this is an individual, say a young grad, a young alumni, a young person, no spouse, no kids, no nothing, their decision-making process is probably, well, you ask me and I say yes or no. What could the decision-making process be at the corporate level? Is it filling out paperwork? Is it sending a request? Do they need a W-9? Do they need a purchase order? Do they need your 501c3 documentation? This is the what are the specific steps of the decision-making process you have to ask. I do this with every one of my clients. You've agreed as the president to move forward. What's the process? Do you need me to send you a purchase order? Do you need a 3-bid process? Do you need a copy of my W-9? Can you give me a credit card today, or do I have to wait for a check run? We need to make sure we know all of this information. What is the decision-making process? How do they make the next step? Where is the decision making? Like, where is the real decision made? At what level of the organization is the decision made? So again, I go to you two that are asking for sponsorships within corporations. Is it made in a community relations department or a PR department? Is it made at a committee level? Is it made at a C level and the president has to sign off on everything? Or the CFO has to sign off on everything? It's not just who is involved in the decision, it's where is the decision made. I can tell you, when I was with Volkswagen Audi PR, there were some decisions we made in the PR department that had multiple people in the PR department that had to sign off on it. There were other decisions that had to be made at the North American headquarters level. And there are other decisions that had to go all the way back to Germany. If you're dealing with Germany, there's a lot more people involved and a lot more decision levels. When does the prospect need or want to make the decision? Some of the things that you are dealing with are time bound. Olivia, if you say, I need a donation because we're going to run out of stuff by next week, and you find out that the person that you're chasing won't have money again until 2021, they are not qualified. Close the file. End of story. Doesn't mean you can't go back to them in 2021. Doesn't mean you can't make nurturing calls with them to have that conversation about 2021. But if their decision is time-based or your result needs to be time-based, they are not always qualified if the when doesn't line up with your when. Here's the last one, the why. Why does the decision process work the way it does? Sometimes that's the way we've always done it. Sometimes it's because we have a lot of red tape. Sometimes there's compliance issues involved. If I'm ever dealing with somebody that's in healthcare, or I'm dealing with somebody that's in financial planning, there's always a compliance department I need to talk to. Okay, so sometimes the why needs to affect you as well. And knowing that why can sometimes prevent you from prospecting and proposing to people that aren't qualified. If you ask, why is the decision made this way? And they say, well, we always need to make sure that we don't invest our money in any nonprofits for children because we've had problems with that in the past. Now we know that the why is a problem for us as well. So here's kind of the one caveat. Every one of the areas may not be appropriate for who you're talking to. For instance, if you are prospecting individuals, the question about where in the organization the decisions are made doesn't apply. Laurel comes to Chris and Anne-Marie and says, well, where in your organization is the decision made? Anne-Marie and I are going to look at each other and go, what is she talking about? Right? Individual, family, not going to have decision levels of an organization. But there might be a when. There might be we're waiting on our tax return to come in. As soon as it comes in, we'll get back to you. Okay? So you need to be conscious of all these, but you also need to make sure that you don't get caught up in them. So when you get to a decision-making process, before you start asking all these questions, it's good to sit back with a client and kind of review what has been covered to this point. You've gone through pain, you've gone through budget, review some of that stuff. You said you're trying to accomplish X. You said the solution you're looking for is Y. Hey, remind me, Laurel, you had mentioned that you were trying to invest in the community. Why was it that you were looking to make that? You kind of already know the answers to some of these questions. Don't hesitate to ask them again. The more the prospect talks, the better off we are. They buy on emotion, they justify on the intellectual stuff. So get them emotionally involved again as you're starting to start talking about decision making. And as you're kind of going through these questions, Qualify or disqualify the prospect, or determine if there's an additional meeting needed. And then what you can do is establish an upfront contract for the next meeting. So Laurel, hypothetically, actually I'll pick on Olivia. Olivia, hypothetically, you come to me and you want $500 for an investment in blankets, pillows, body wash. I say, you know what, I think that's a great idea. I'm gonna have to think this over. She goes, okay, well, who's normally involved in decision making? Well, it's my wife, Anne Marie, and I. Oh, new person involved. Well, how do you two normally make decisions? Well, if it's over $100, we normally sit down and talk about it. Okay. I'm not qualified to get a proposal today. The other decision maker has not been a part of the conversation. That's when you suggest, that's great. Why don't I set up a meeting for the three of us so that if she has any questions, I can answer them for her? Would it be better if I set up a meeting for the three of us to go over what we're trying to accomplish and what we're looking for as a donation from you guys? At that next meeting, you and Anne Marie and I will sit down, and this can go in one of three directions. You guys decide the Children's Center isn't right for you. We might decide that what you guys are willing to donate isn't going to be what we're looking for, or we decide when that donation is going to be and what the donation amount is going to be for you and Anne Marie. Does that work for you? There's that upfront contract. Anne Marie and I know it. By the end of that next meeting, we're having a yes or a no. But I can't give you any, this sounds great. Let me talk to Anne Marie and I'll let you know. There's no think it overs. There's no I'll get back to you. We set a next meeting. That's the decision-making process. We get the decision makers involved. So, these decision-making steps have three possible outcomes. And this kind of goes back to my upfront contract. The three prospect outcomes. The prospect is disqualified and you stop the selling process. Period, end of story. We are looking for a donation. I don't make cash donations. Thank you for your time. We're looking for sponsors. We don't sponsor Catholic schools. Thank you for your time. We are looking for a grant. We do in-kind donations. Thank you for your time, right? It doesn't mean that you can't pivot off, but if you've been going down the pain and budget question, looking for cash, looking for grants, looking for sponsorships, and now they throw a monkey wrench in here, disqualify them. It doesn't mean that you can't work with them down the road. No doesn't mean not right now all the time. It just might mean not right now for now. If they are disqualified, they are disqualified. Close the file, move on. We don't want to make enemies, but we're not here to make friends. We're here to make donations. We're here to make commissions. We're here to move on to the bank. Okay? So if the prospect is disqualified, if you are unable or unwilling to meet the requirements in this decision process, you should avoid making efforts that will not pay off. Disqualifying the client, you stop wasting time, you move on. Only so many hours in the day. Don't waste it chasing people that don't qualify. Second part of this, you discover that other people with whom you have not spoken are involved in the decision-making process. So if you discover that other people with whom you've not yet spoken are part of the decision process, this is a big red flag. We have to have these conversations. You must meet with them, and you must proceed and determine their role in the process and their views of you as a solution or as a nonprofit. They could seriously affect the solutions that you might offer. They could seriously affect the request you're making. If these are not satisfied to your, if these are not clarified to your satisfaction, disqualify and move on. I guess I would say this if I was dealing with a family trust, talking to one of the siblings and 6 siblings had to sign off. If I couldn't get all 6 siblings a part of the conversation or knowing who the decision maker was, unfortunately, sometimes I had to walk away. There's a family called the Thews family. You ever heard of the Thews family? You've heard of CompuWare. CompuWare software, downtown Detroit. You've heard of the Carolina Hurricanes Hockey Club. Thews was Peter Karamanos' partner in all of that. Mr. Thews passed away. He left millions and millions and millions of dollars to his wife and his kids. All of his sons went to Brother Rice. All of his sons were interested in supporting Brother Rice. Mom didn't think Brother Rice was conservative enough and wasn't teaching enough of a pro-life message that she decided that she wanted to found her own high school up in Clarkston called Everest Academy. The kids were our alumni. The kids were our graduates. Mom would not come to the table and talk to us. I had to close the file and move on. Call after call after call after call to the kids that kept saying, if mom's not on board, there's no point. Mom wouldn't take my calls. Mom wouldn't meet with me. Close the file, move on. It's unfortunate. They could have made a significant financial impact in our community. And unfortunately, as morbid as this sounds, the statement that one of the kids told me was, until mom's dead, I don't know if we're going to be able to do much. Right? Maybe it's a not right now, not a no. But if there are other people involved, you have to make them a part of the decision. If they're not willing to meet with you, if they're not willing to hear you out, you sometimes have to close the file and move on. Can you two think of any specific instances where this might be appropriate in your worlds?
I had a lot of incidences at Oakland with corporations where I should have just closed it. And I tried to like dig further, like, oh, well, maybe there's opportunity in this, or maybe there's opportunity in this program. And it just led to like different like pointless conversations, I guess, when I probably should have just like let it go.
Yeah, go deeper on those. Give me an example of a specific corporation or person.
So like for Flagstar, like Flagstar Bank, they do give to Keeper of the Dream. At Oakland, it's like a $5,000 scholarship, but we knew that they were capable of giving more. And so I started meeting with different people from like their LGBTQ community or employee resource group. And I met with someone from like a different resource group and trying to like pull them into other things, but they were more interested in like what you were saying a couple weeks ago, like free consultation kind of for their programs based off of ours. And so I was kind of like using that as a way to like, okay, yeah, come see ours, but look at like the impact it's having when really it wasn't like doing anything.
Yeah.
So I like wasted a lot of time with trying to pull in different people, knowing that they had the money, but if they weren't interested, if the people who were making the decisions weren't interested, I should have
Yeah.
wasting my time.
Olivia, how about you? Anyone you can think of?
Not anything specific, just thinking of like, for example, if we have a volunteer come in and they, you know, love our cause and they want to get their corporation involved, but we never can get to like the right person, you know, the person that can actually make the decisions. It's always just kind of like, obviously a dead end.
Yeah. Well, with this questioning strategy, is it a dead end or are we not asking the right questions?
Probably not asking the right questions.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Like I said, I'm in this to not offend people. I'm not in this to make enemies, but at the same time, I'm not in this to make friends. I do this all the time with sales prospects. Who in your organization is in charge of this? So-and-so, but I don't know if they'd ever want to talk to. Well, give me their number. I'm not comfortable doing that. Okay. I'll go on LinkedIn, find that person, and reach out to them directly. I do sales training. I hear you're in charge of sales training for your organization. Let's talk. Guy in Atlanta, I dropped this person's name. Said, yeah, know him very well, know Sandler. Not sure if we need you right now, but let's set up a conversation. Because my friend Pat didn't feel comfortable passing up the ladder, I found out who Pat's boss's boss's boss was and went after him. There's nothing that prevents you from doing the same. If the person that you're talking to at Flagstar is not in charge of corporate donations, corporate contributions, scroll through their website. Find out if they have an annual report that lists the people in charge of certain things or a leadership body. Go right to the president, the VP, the CEO, CFO. Go higher up the chain if the person that you're talking to doesn't know the right answers. Because that person is disqualified. It doesn't mean that Flagstar is disqualified. It means that that person might be disqualified. Don't waste your time proposing something to them if for Flagstar if they don't make the ultimate decision or know who is involved in the decision-making process. If they can't answer for us the who, what, where, when, why, and how, that might be disqualifying for them. It's tough love, but it's the love you need to hear. Go ahead.
Actually, just thinking about it now this morning, we have was a community partner, Diplomat. I know they've sold in different things, but all of our contacts we've had there have left. We've had numerous contacts, and we don't have a contact there now, but they're a huge business we want to get involved with. And my friend just started working there, but very low level, has nothing to do with any sort of community relations, anything. He's just a sales guy. But I did just ask him if he knew who I should get a hold of to start the relationship. So kind of going on this, he said, just email me information and I'll pass that along to my boss and she'll pass that along to who she thinks needs it. So it'll be interesting trying to kind of use what we're learning now to see if I can get to the person that I need to get to.
Warm introductions are always good. And have that upfront contract with your friend. Hey, Olivia, this is really important for my job. No is absolutely an acceptable answer if you're not comfortable doing this. But if I sent you an email about the Children's Center, could you please forward it to your boss and copy me on it and introduce the two of us so that I can make a direct request to her for her introducing us to the leadership? If the answer is, Olivia, I've only been here 10 days, I'm not comfortable doing with that, you gave them permission to say no, okay? You had that upfront contract. No is an acceptable answer. If the answer is, yeah, no problem, let's do it, we're on. Type up the email, make sure in that email you thank that person for their time. Olivia, I really appreciate your time on the phone with me today. As I mentioned, Wayland Children's Center is really interested in getting donations from corporate partners. You had mentioned that you would introduce me to Laurel as she's in charge of your department. She might have more insight on corporate contributions. I really appreciate you making this introduction. If you could please let me know the best way to, next steps, I'd appreciate it. Something very generic like that. What's the name of the company?
Diplomat.
Oh, so when you said Diplomat, it wasn't like these are diplomats in the community?
No, it's Diplomat. They just kind of sold Optum, so they're Diplomat and Optum. I'm not exactly sure that was a whole.
Pharmacy?
Yes.
Diplomat Specialty Pharmacy. I think you've mentioned them before.
Maybe
I know them for a reason.
They were big in the community. Lots has changed though, but us girls, like at Whaley, we have done, where you just look online and you find who's the whoever and you call them, but it always works better when you kind of have some sort of relationship with someone there and then they can introduce you. We have better luck with that for sure.
So here's an old trick. You go to their website, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies on their website have social media icons in the footer. You click on their LinkedIn, Diplomat RX. 7 people from my school work here. They have 999 employees on LinkedIn. So here's where you can find people that might be second connections of yours that work there. Senior Manager of Operations, sounds important. Vice President Operations. As you kind of go through here,
Mm-hmm.
as you look at filters, you might want to look at, do you know that their headquarters is in Flint?
Mm-hmm.
So say you want to talk to people that are in Flint. Say you want to look at people that might have a title like VP. And then apply that filter. We know that Shannon is the VP, security officer. Brooke is the associate vice president. I can look here at Brooke and realize that I have 3 connections: Gary Jonas, Ken Wisniewski, and Dinesh Chawla. Maybe I can reach out to one of those 3 and say, hey, it's Olivia. Would you mind introducing me to your LinkedIn connection, Brooke Bliss? Brooke Bliss has to be a fake name, right? Anyway.
And sometimes I think, because I've done this a lot, sometimes you'll find out that the people that are connected to them are just like connected to them because they've heard of them, or, oh, I just met them really quick at this, or I am not that close to them. So I've had a lot of successes with it, but I've also had like ones that didn't end up working out.
And that can be good or bad. I have, God, let's check out my profile. I've had 772 people view my profile in the last 30 days. And I have about 3,400 connections within here. Okay, some of these people, I can tell you first name, last name, where they went to high school, where they went to college, where I know them, why I know them. Linda Hubbard, president and CEO at Carhartt. Laurel, that might be a good one for you to reach out to. I coached her son in lacrosse. Her son still calls me coach, even though he's your age now. Demo was supposed to play golf on our outing yesterday, and he blew us off. But Charlie Shammy, I have no idea who that is. Not a clue. I have no idea if we have any mutual connections. I have no idea how long we've been connected. But apparently, him and I have been connected since August. I don't know if he added me or I added him. But there's nothing wrong with me if Laurel comes in and says, hey, Chris, I saw you're connected to Charlie Shammy on LinkedIn. Can you make an introduction? There's nothing wrong with me taking 10 seconds and going, sure, I'll reach out. I don't know him, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
There's normally not people in LinkedIn that you accepted their connections that you dislike or that you don't trust. You would have not accepted their connections, right? So when it comes to decision makers, we're kind of getting sidetracked here, but that's okay because I'm kind of coaching you guys to some prospecting stuff too. I want to make sure that we kind of talk about how to get in front of the right people. So getting back to the slides, the third option is the prospect is qualified to continue the selling process, right? If they are qualified, if you agree to participate in this decision-making process with them, you've developed a strong upfront contract to continue implementing the Sandler selling system. We've decided they're qualified. Their decision-making steps, we have the right people involved in the decision-making. We know the who, what, where, when, why, and how. They're qualified. Good. That's what we want. Right? So we talked. Either they're disqualified because they're not qualified. We disqualify them because the other people with whom we have to talk to are not going to be involved in the process, or they're qualified and we move forward. If we don't disqualify them when they're disqualified, we're wasting time. We're chasing. If we are trying to present to them and the decision makers aren't at the table, we're not going to get a true decision. There's going to be two other things that might mess us up. So now the next part is, what do we do with a qualified prospect? If the prospect is qualified to continue the prospect, what do we do with them? The prospect is qualified if we've uncovered pain that we can solve, budget that we can use, and decision makers that are making the process appropriate in which we want to participate. So, if we've uncovered their pain, which you believe that your nonprofit, your mission, helps them solve for, they're qualified. If we identified their budget, and their budget is in line with what you're asking for, they're qualified. If we've identified their decision-making process, and it's one that you're willing to participate in, they're qualified. So when I say you're willing to participate in, I'm guessing they're not going to say we're going to do a 3 bid for our donations, and whoever wins this foot race is going to be the winner, right? Like their decision-making process isn't something completely goofy. What if they come back and say, no problem, fill out our application? Okay, send me the application. What's it entail? Who, what, where, when, why, and how of your 501c3. You know, your annual report from last year, maybe your official 1099, not 1099, or incorporation of your 501c3. Those decision-making processes are appropriate. If you're trying to get a $500 grant and they say no problem, the application grant must be an essay limited 1,000 pages. Is that decision-making worth your time? No, okay? So we must make sure that their decision-making process is incorporated. So what should happen next? I'll let you read this before I read it to you.
This is when you offer them like a proposal.
Yes. A presentation. A formal meeting. So, what type of presentation or proposal will be made? Who will participate in this presentation or proposal? How much time is appropriate for this presentation? And what decision will be made? In this case, we want a yes or a no. Yes, we are making a donation. Yes, we are spending money on a sponsorship. Yes, you have qualified for a grant that we're going to be looking to provide. No, that's an also outcome at the end of the next meeting. No, you're not making the donation. And that's okay, I'm closing the file and I'm moving on. No, we are not interested in sponsoring that event. No is an acceptable answer. In the buyer's seller's stance, we control that. We told them up front they are allowed to say no. Gives us control. So I bluntly ask this, and I would ask it this way as if you were talking to me as a donor. You've uncovered my pain. You've uncovered my budget. Olivia, say it's a $1,000 sponsorship for Tuxes and Tennies. Say it's a $5,000 sponsorship for Tuxes and Tennies. You've uncovered my pain. I want to support youth organizations in the Flint metro area. I was an orphan myself. I have the ties to foster children. You've uncovered my pain. You've uncovered my budget. You're looking for a $5,000 donation. We have $10,000 in our annual budget for donating to the local causes. Who's the decision maker? Right? I'm the president and CEO of the company. I'm interested in this. So you say to me, Chris, if I do this presentation and all of your questions are answered and you approve of our solution or the sponsorship, what's next? I might come back with you and say, you send me an invoice and I pay it. Simple, right? Well, then I need a purchase order. Then I need a copy of your 501c3. Then I need a formal document to present to my CFO so he pays the bill. Right? We need a clear outcome of what is approved on the next step. We are getting a yes or a no. And in a lot of cases, the really good news is, as you've gone through every one of these steps, pain, budget, and now into fulfillment, you're normally not asking for a yes or a no. Normally, they're answering those questions or asking them questions themselves. If you say to me, Chris, if we do a presentation, all your questions are answered, and you approve the donation, what's next? You're gonna ask me, or I might ask you something like, well, when do you need it by? Well, I just need the address of where to send it to. We didn't ask for a yes or a no. We just asked what's next, and normally they're kind of walking themselves into that solution. But maybe there is a formal presentation. So let's not make it all roses and flowers, okay? So Laurel, think about working with Anne-Marie and I, asking for a donation. You've uncovered our pain. We believe in Catholic education. You've uncovered our budget. Yeah, we've got $500 set aside for a charity this year. You've identified our decision-making process. Well, anything over $100, Anne-Marie and I sit down and talk about together. And you set that up front contract. Chris, why don't I sit down with you and Anne-Marie? We'll make sure we answer all of your questions. And at the end of that meeting, we can get a yes or no on whether or not we want to move forward with this donation. If it's no, no problem. We shake hands, part ways as friends. If it's a yes, we'll talk about the next steps. So what are you expecting in this presentation? Do you need a visual presentation? Do you need a hand-on document asking for a donation? Do you need me to review the proposal with Anne-Marie? Is there anyone else that would want to attend this? Maybe a banker, financial planner, attorney? How much time do you think we need for this presentation? Is it fair that at the end of this presentation, we'll get a decision, a yes or a no from you and Anne-Marie? These are appropriate questions. I'm not asking for anything unethical. I'm not asking for anything out of the realm of normal conversation. Because if you just came to me and said, hey, Chris, I'd like to make a proposal for you and Anne-Marie to donate $500 to Detroit Christopher Ray, and I said, sounds great. Why don't you email me the numbers on it? I'll talk to Anne-Marie and I'll get back to you. Do you feel like you still have control over the situation? No. You don't. Anne-Marie, the woman you've never met before. You don't know if she's blonde or brunette. You don't know if she's nice or mean. You don't know if she believes in Catholic education or not. Her pain could be different from my pain. You might have to start some of these steps over, but you're with the decision makers at the table. So I'm going to copy and paste this in there as well. What type of presentation or proposal will be made? Who will participate? How much time is available? What decision will be made? A yes or a no? And again, if the right decision makers are not at that meeting, you have every right to cancel that meeting. I say stuff like this all the time. I'm going to send you this document, the survey for you and your boss to fill out. We're going to review these surveys on Friday at 1 o'clock. You'll both be there, correct? Great. I've got about an hour set aside for that meeting. Hour work for you? Yeah. At that point, no distractions. We're turning our cell phones off. We're not answering texts. We're not answering emails. We're not taking calls. We're in that meeting, and at the end of that meeting, we make a decision that we're going to move forward with training or not. Yeah, Chris, sounds good. And then I ask for the follow-up up front from the contract. Hey, if I don't see these surveys by Thursday and the meeting's on Friday, do I have permission to call you and remind you to get them to me? And if I don't get them, we're going to reschedule the meeting or cancel it. Oh yeah, Chris, no problem. We'll make sure that happens. Confirm these meetings before you actually leave for them. Call them the day before. Play dumb in an email. Hey, Laurel, it's Chris. Just want to make sure I wrote this down right. We're meeting tomorrow, 1 o'clock, your office, me, you, and Anne-Marie. Yep. Okay, just want to make sure I had it right.
That is something that is super important that I've been trying to do with every meeting I have with anyone, confirming it, reminding them, but also making sure you're on the same page. But it gets really difficult when you have a ton of meetings or you have a lot of work and then you're like, shoot, I have this meeting tomorrow. I should have reminded them or whatever, but that's really important for any meeting you have.
Can I give you some blunt advice?
Yes.
Finding the 30 seconds to email that person to confirm, finding that 30 seconds to text the person to confirm. Is that better than getting in the car and driving 20 minutes to that meeting to have a non-decision maker show up and the decision maker you need in the room not there, to either waste another hour of your time presenting to a non-decision maker or to cancel that meeting once you get there face-to-face to drive 20 minutes home?
Right.
I've learned that the hard way in my sales career. Didn't confirm it, drove out there. They said in their admin, oh, he told me to just take good notes and get back to you. Right. The weird thing is I ended up getting the sale and the guy was a prick. And I went right back at him and told him he wasted my time. And then he was the worst client I ever had. And in hindsight, it might not have been worth the sale. But I learned from that. Don't learn from it the hard way. We are living in COVID. We are living in Zoom. Send the email, make the phone call, send the text. Laurel, I will do stuff like this, especially if you are dealing with decision makers for nonprofits. Ask questions like this. Hey, just to make sure, I want to confirm that I have your cell phone in case I get lost on the way there. What's the best number to reach you? What's your cell phone number? You get it? You put it in the file. The day before, text them. Hey, Chris, it's Laurel. Just want to make sure we're still on for tomorrow with Anne Marie, 1 o'clock to your office. You know, I'll share this with you guys, and don't get me in trouble. Don't tell anybody. But if I'm going to share desktop 2, right? How many LinkedIn messages am I behind?
A lot.
Yeah. How many emails am I behind?
Double that.
61,
Yeah.
right? Who is it?
RoboVent.
Oh, RoboVent. Cool.
Victory for Chris.
Eric just came in. My big check from RoboVent just came in.
Very good.
Yeah. Potentially training 23 people. They're all doing their assessments. So
Oh, good.
Yay.
hopefully big win for Chris.
Victory.
Yes. But my point being is, if I confirm with them, hey, I really appreciate you making an appointment in time with me. What's the best cell phone number to reach you? Do you guys check this more than you check your laptop? I assume as millennials, you are better getting a text from somebody than an email from somebody.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask for their cell phone. Professional relationships, we are all using professional cell phone etiquette. Chris, just so I make sure, I want to confirm with you next Wednesday that the meeting with you and Anne-Marie and I, for Thursday I have, and just in case I get lost on my way there, can you give me your cell phone number just so I can call you if I get lost? Oh, yeah, no problem. Very few people will tell you, no, I won't give you my cell phone. I've had 2 people in my professional career tell me no. One, Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard. I think that's appropriate. I am the Oakland County Sheriff. I am in charge of a law enforcement community of over 1,000 people, not to mention how many constituents and citizens I have in there. It was about Brother Ice, where he's an alumni, getting him tickets to be on the field at Ford Field for a football game. I said, give me your cell phone number. I'll give you a call once, I get the tickets. And he said, I'm sorry, Chris, I can't do that. Give me your cell phone number. When I get at Ford Field, I'll give you a call. His call showed up with no caller ID. It's appropriate.
My
The
bad.
last thing he wants is his cell phone number getting out, so every time somebody gets pulled over, they go, I'm calling the sheriff, right? The other one was Kirk Gibson. You guys ever watch the baseball Tigers games? Kirk Gibson, World Series, Hall of Famer. We did the website for the Kirk Gibson Foundation for MS. And he says, Chris, everybody in Los Angeles and Detroit, where I won World Championships, World Series, wants my phone number to ask me for a donation, a sponsorship, a jersey for their nonprofit when I'm trying to raise money for my battle versus Parkinson's. Chris, I'll call you. Give me your number, email me, I'll call you. All right, you're a celebrity. I get that. But if I said, I'm sorry, Laurel, I don't give up my cell phone, I don't see many people that we're going to be dealing with pulling something like that with you.
And I at this point, like in the submarine, right? You've kind of built a relationship with them, so it makes more sense. But I know I've learned to be cautious about giving out my cell phone. Like, you know, I meet somebody and he's a news anchor and he wants to, you know, do this whatever with Whaley, give me your cell phone. And I've given them out.
Can you give me 1 second? My daughter is calling.
Yep.
Hello, Harper.
Hi, Daddy.
Oh, hi, Gannon.
The lady's trying to steal some of my putty and I don't want
Okay, I'm at work, so talk to Nana.
Well, Gannon isn't letting me.
Guys,
That's why I'm taking
talk
it
to
away.
Nana.
So,
The 5-year-old and the 9-year-old are arguing about putty. The in emergencies only line is now apparently for putty.
That's a big deal. I have lots of kids here. Putty's a big deal.
Yes. But Nana and great grandma are there right now, and sorry about that. So, Olivia, let me dig deeper in that. As a daddy of a 10-year-old little girl and a 5-year-old little girl, and I hope I'm not being unprofessional here, you're both young, attractive women. Do you have concerns about creepy reporter guy going, "Hey, Olivia, wanted to invite you to," like, are you worried about it for socially creepy stuff in addition to professional stuff?
That and the line getting a little bit blurred where my intention is completely professional and I want to connect because it's professional, but that may not be their intention. So keeping that line, keeping it separated has been difficult a lot, especially, you know, we meet a lot of people, we go networking, and that's where you meet people and it's social aspects. And so you kind of meet a lot of people in a relaxed atmosphere, hoping to eventually make it more professional. But it is professional, your intention, but it's, you know, when you're having drinks and stuff with a group of people, I don't know, it just is hard. It's been hard for me kind of keeping that separate. And so I've started to, at my golf outing, there was a man I was talking to, and he was interested in learning more about Whaley and super excited. It's the first time he was at our golf outing. And he said, "Give me your cell phone number." And since I'm trying to be better about not giving my cell phone number out, I said, "I won't give you my cell phone, but here's my work email. I answer this all the time." And he ended up saying, "Oh, never mind." I was like, "Oh." So that was like obviously his intention, that wouldn't have went anywhere. He's disqualified right there. But
Yeah.
it has been difficult, especially just how we meet people at the networking and things, and keeping that separated and everybody's intentions.
I asked that question specifically because my staff at Brother Rice was all male alumni or spouses of alumni or parents of current students. I'm not saying this negatively to you two or belittling, but I didn't have to worry about 50-year-old Michelle Levoy, who had a senior in the senior class and her husband was one of the alumni, giving her cell phone out to somebody else and saying, "Call me if you need anything," because I think the social surroundings of her husband's an alumni, her kids are in school there, she's a staff member. Don't flirt with Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Telling people don't flirt with Laurel and Olivia, I asked that question very bluntly because I don't know if you two feel pressure from donors or ever get put in situations where you go, "Is this smart? Is this safe?" And I guess I kind of look at it almost as a little bit of a big brother to you two, as I'm twice your age. You know, do I need to ask these questions and make sure that we're not putting you in situations that are uncomfortable in the nonprofit world?
Which I think that's where practicing the upfront contract will be really beneficial. Like I've gone out to lunch, you know, assuming it was professional, we're going to talk about Whaley and stuff, and just a general, let's talk about Whaley and everything that's going on. Then you get there and it's like, whoa, like kind of blindsided. So I feel like having the upfront contract and being more straightforward, as uncomfortable as that might be, it will definitely be beneficial and save us from a lot of like wasted time and also just uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
Can I go back? Oh, I'm sorry, Laurel. I do want to hear what you have to say too first before I say something.
No, I agree with her. I've had that happen to me with a company, and he would ask to meet with me often, and I had to turn him down a lot because I knew that he like expressed to me like he was going through like weird things with his wife and stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is weird. So like, how do you like? Yes, they've given sponsorship to different events that we have, but how do you keep that like professional? And he did have my phone number and all this stuff. So when I thought like it was a really good transition leaving Oakland, someone else is like in charge of him now, and I haven't like even talked to him. I've actually talked to someone else
Yeah.
in that corporation for Cristo Rey. So that was like really awkward for me in my current relationship and everything, and the fact that I was a student and stuff. So
Two things that I would say. There is two people in a meeting from the same nonprofit with one donor, no problem. Three people in a meeting is you're ganging up on them, right? Don't be hesitant if you do feel something inappropriate or uncomfortable to say to your leadership, why don't you come with me on this one? And that's part of your upfront contract. Hey, I really appreciate your showing interest in the Children's Center. I think this is such an important meeting that my director of fundraising, my VP of, my president wants to meet with you as well. Why don't I schedule lunch for the three of us? If they hem and they haw, then that's disqualifying on them. You know, an adult in the room is going, not that you two aren't adults, you know what I mean, but you know, a third party in the room might be part of that. But I would say go back to Good Sandler. Before they say, yeah, why don't we go to lunch, get into your questioning strategies. If you've already built the bonding and rapport with them and they're ready to say, let's go to lunch, we need to make sure that they have pain, budget, and are the decision makers before we schedule that meeting. Hey, that sounds great. Right now, we're not taking face-to-face meetings because of COVID. You have an excuse in there. Why don't we book an hour-long phone call? We'll do a Zoom meeting. At that point, we can get to know more about what your goals are, what your pain is when it comes, maybe not use the word pain, other types of nonprofits you've sponsored, what budgets you might have put aside for it, what the decision-making process is for you to make a donation. If at the end of that meeting, we figure out that this might be a good fit for you, well, then maybe we can schedule something face-to-face down the road.
yeah.
There's fundraising and there's friend raising. Don't always put yourself in the friend raising area because it could be hours wasted out of your day just going on a wild goose chase.
Right. I think the beginning of my whole experience in fundraising was I was just trying to learn and get as much exposure as possible. So I would like, yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do that. Yes, let's, just so I could get like the experience, the exposure, and be able to really see how the process works and things like that, that I became like, I guess, vulnerable to things like that without really knowing it.
Yeah.
I think that was part of like starting off anything with fundraising or sales and stuff.
All right, I'm going to say this from my perspective. This is 44-year-old, outgoing, hard-drinking, life of the party Chris, right? I have taken more lunches, more breakfasts, more golf events than I know of because I knew the guy was rich and he wanted to talk to me about something, and I knew where the restaurant was. I could order a steak and drink a bunch of red wine, and it's on his dime. No problem, right? I've gone and played golf with more guys that I either knew that they're thinking of taking us golfing was their support. Hey, I'll go play golf. Maybe he knows somebody else. Like I have put myself in those social situations because I love golfing, drinking, hanging out, that kind of stuff. Sometimes that's the perks of the job.
Right.
But again, I'm saying this as big brother to Laurel and Olivia. Protect yourself and have bonding rapport, you know, budget, pain, and fulfillment discussed before you take that meeting, and have the upfront contract being that we're not going to go into that next meeting unless we know at the end of that meeting we're getting a yes or a no, and we know that you're qualified.
Yeah.
Don't go to that lunch or that meeting to qualify them. Have them qualified beforehand.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as like a fundraiser, a lot of these in meetings and these lunches and these golf outings are a lot to do with like the stewardship part of giving. And so it's not necessarily that you're trying to like get money from them at this time. Maybe it's just like thanking them, like bringing them a gift, bringing them out to lunch, whatever. And
Mhm.
that's like you kind of, with this guy specifically, you had to like be careful doing. Like if you're going to meet with him for lunch, it's literally to thank him, to pay for his lunch, to give him his gift, like tell him what's going on with the students that he sponsored for Keeper of the Dream or whatever. Like really
Mhm.
keep it with that, strictly with that.
Mhm.
So it's just, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and especially just like, I mean, I'm in Flint, right? And there's a ton of nonprofits and it's all a close community. So really none of it's like cold calling people to sponsor you. It's all just relationships, and who you know is how you get sponsors and donors and stuff. So it's balancing the building a relationship part. So sometimes, you know, just like stewardship, going out to lunch and things, and then just keeping that separate.
Yeah.
But anyways.
And one thing that doesn't hurt as well is sometimes you can bring in an ally to make them feel better if it's a stewardship call.
Yeah.
So, you know, one thing that I was frequent to do is if I was meeting with somebody, I know that their kids were really affected by a certain teacher, or they were part of a certain sports program. Sometimes when I would set up those lunches, I would invite the coach or the teacher that they had the relationship with to join us, so that those two could do some bonding and some connecting and catching up in addition to it. Sometimes that coach teacher, they didn't want to be involved. Sometimes they looked at it and went, yeah, free meal.
Yeah.
Bruin Street Nesta Sandwiches over at Ember's Deli, I'm in. Done. Like, let's go. Or I'd say, you know, this person needs the stewardship meeting to know that we're going to not just talk to them about their annual gift, but maybe a legacy gift or a capital gift. I would bring in the president or the principal to come with me on one of those calls. So I guess I'm kind of going in two ways with this. Use Good Sandler. That's number one. Don't take meetings just to take meetings. Sometimes you need to disqualify them as a prospect before that meeting. If they have no pain and no budget and they're not the decision maker, there's no point in taking the lunch. And especially be safe, as, again, said it 6 times now, as I big brother you. It eliminates some creepy people if they're not going to be taking it seriously. There's no problem in saying, oh, you know what, I'm not really supposed to use my cell phone for work stuff. Here's my office number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question that's like off topic of this.
You always do. Go for it. Come on.
And we might like talk about this later, I guess, as we're talking about like prospecting. I'm not sure when that's happening, but how much time when you were in nonprofit, it might be different with sales, I'm not sure, did you spend on like prospecting and reaching out to new donors or new prospects in relation to like your current donors and stewarding them and things like that?
Great question. I needed to spend the majority of my time prospecting. And
had the capacity where you had other people who could do the stewarding?
yeah, in some cases, what really ultimately we ended up doing is kind of putting together a top 10, a top 100, and a top 1,000 list. Or maybe it was a top 100, top 500, top 1,000, where all three of us, the president, myself, my major gift officer, needed to be in the conversation in the top 100. Then we kind of pushed the president out, and just myself and my major gift officer were on the next 500. And then you pushed me out, and just my major gift officer was for the top 1,000. So it might be doing research on those people. It might be reaching out to them. It might be a lot of different things. It wasn't just prospecting to prospect. It was really putting together a top prospect list. And some of those people were disqualified. We pulled them out. We put them in with somebody else.
So the top 100, 500, 1,000 were all prospects, is what you're saying? Oh, okay.
It was different for us because we had an alumni base and a previous donor history where we could go through and go, you know what, this family gave us $250,000 10 years ago and they haven't been anything since. Why haven't we followed up with them?
Yeah.
You know, this guy we know just signed an NFL contract for $100 million. Or I'm sorry, Major League Baseball contract for $100 million. He's given a couple $100 here and there. Now it's time to go after the Yankees second baseman and really have a conversation with him.
Right. Because when I've been having conversations with Naomi, because it's just like us two and like the president, she's like made it very evident that she spends almost all of her time on when it's not like the nitty gritty of development or whatever, or behind the scenes stuff, but the majority of her time on stewarding current donors. And so there isn't really a lot of time made for like prospects or reaching out to new donors or anything like that. And so I was just kind of like interested in, because I think there's a lot of potential out there, but also like you're saying, you don't want to like waste your time when you're not going to be getting willing and able people, right?
Some of that is going to have to be department based. Some of that's going to be how you divide and conquer between Naomi, you, and the president.
Yeah. I think similar to you, it sounds like you kind of have like a donor cultivation. What I call it is my donor cultivation plan, where it's like identification, cultivation, solicitation, stewardship, and all the research I've kind of done stresses more the stewarding and calling and checking up on people and the thank yous and that sort of stuff, trying to get their second and third donation compared to, you know, cultivating and getting new people. So I kind of see what you're saying. You said she spends like all of her time just stewarding the current donors, which is a lot of the research I've done. That's what they stress to do. But obviously you have to get new people. But
exactly, because like if one of those major people falls off, like your top 100, you need to make up for that, right? And
Yep.
yeah,
I don't know. So it's like, to me, I feel like prospecting and reaching out to new people, doing what we're learning right now is like really important. But doing it in a strategic way where you're not just like cold calling all these people, you have someone connecting you to them, you have like whatever. So these strategies in line to do it, to make it faster, because something that we've talked through in this class that's making me question the normal process of fundraising is people will tell you, fundraisers will tell you it'll take you between like a year and like 3 years to develop a relationship with someone before you get money in your hand.
mm-hmm.
And that's like, okay, why does that take so long? But learning through this and through this training, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yep.
Like move on to like the next person and not feel bad about it, I guess.
Yep. So I'm going to do two things. We're going to go over this a lot more in depth next week. I want to make sure I copy and paste this into a slide email for you guys. There it is. Okay. You see what the next topic is?
Yeah.
Closing the sale, fulfillment and post-sell. That's number 8. Look at what number 9 is. Improving your batting average. Definition of success. IR theory chart. And then look at what number 10 is.
Ooh, the
Prospecting behavior.
cookbook.
Yes.
Been excited to learn about this mysterious cookbook.
Sarah hates it so much. So here's what we're going to do. If you guys commit to me, we're going to rock and roll through this for the next 29 minutes. If I go 5 minutes over, you guys got a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
We're going to finish 9. Next week, we're going to finish 8. Next week, we're going to do 9 and 10 together.
Just because we're on the subject of next week, I probably won't be able to come because of the foundation meeting.
Okay.
I can literally do any like other day though. I feel like if people are open to, or if Olivia's open to like moving it.
It's the 3 of us. We're going to take this offline and find a time that works for the 3 of us. I don't care if it's after 5 p.m. I'm getting you 2 to the finish line.
Okay.
Okay? You are not allowed to miss session 9. We will reschedule as needed.
Okay, cool.
Deal? Pinky promise? Okay. All right. Closing the sale, fulfillment, and post-sell. So, are you ready to confirm the close? Fulfillment elements, the post-sell step. When we talk about the competency in here, so what you need to understand is that the purpose of the fulfillment and post-sell steps are to confirm the close, prove that you can deliver what the prospect needs for their investment they are willing to make, and according to the decision-making process that they have shared, set the expectations for moving forward. So What we need to make sure we do in fulfillment and post-sell, if you are promising them something that might be a sponsorship, a grant, a donation, where is their money going? What are they getting in return for it? They could care about nothing but, I just need something to give to my accountant that shows that I gave them this money. It could be signage at an event. I need to make sure I get your logo in this size. Do you have it in this vector file, this size by this size? I might need you to participate in a video. I might need you to fulfill your donation with cash, branded goods. Could be anything. What we need to make sure we're doing is that there is a clear next step for, if we agree to move forward, what you are delivering and what I am delivering in return for. So we want to discuss the value of a good pain budget decision-making steps as it relates to fulfillment. I want to explain to you the key reasons for not getting the sale. Define the 4 elements of the fulfillment step. There are specific elements in how we fulfill this donation. And then discuss 3 items to cover during the post-sell step. Post-sell is a lot of times protecting your sale. I don't see it as commonly in nonprofits as I do, but that check that Eric just came in here from RoboVent, they are firing their existing sales trainer and hiring me because the guy's not getting the job done. I had to say in post-sell, who is going to go to this guy and tell him you're fired? Because if it's just open-ended that, well, I guess somebody will let him know. Who's telling him that he's fired? And what happens if he comes back and goes, hey, Chris, I know that we had $50,000 in the budget remaining. What if I just took 25 of it and we finished it up? What if he's going to completely slash his pricing in a dying effort to keep the business? Who are you firing? It's my wife's brother. You don't think that would be important to know that you're firing your wife's brother? Like, what's the first thing that's going to say? Dude, I'm married to your sister. You can't fire me. Like, these are the kind of things that have to happen in fulfillment and post-sell. So, in order to accomplish this, we need to make sure that there is an ultimate upfront contract. We talked about upfront contracts. This is the ultimate upfront contract. There's value in proving that we can do, in fact, what we said we can do for the prospect's needs. We have to confirm what the close actually means, and we have to look at how prospects actually close themselves. So, if we're ready to confirm the close, we only confirm the close if we go back to our summary, right? We've accomplished our bonding and rapport. We've established an upfront contract with them. We've taken control of the buyers and sellers dance. You can say no, or I can say no. You might not be qualified. I might not be right for you. We've uncovered their pain. We've gone through the questioning strategies to get deeper into their pain. Is it a surface level pain? Is it a business decision pain? Is it a personal pain that we have solved for? We talked about budget. Are they willing and able? Are they able and willing? Do they have dollars? Do they have the accountability? Do they have the effort? Do they have the people involved? We've talked about the decision-making process. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who is the decision maker? Why is the decision made this way? Where in their organization is the decision made? How do they make the decision? Who are the people that will be making the decision? Once we get through all of that, now we're going to talk about the fulfillment and now the post-sell. Deal?
Yeah.
You.
All right. So we defined a solution that can be solved. Pain. We defined a solution that fits the prospect's budget. We're prepared to present a decision-making process to fit their decision-making process. Now what we're going to do is present a structure for closing the sale with the ultimate contract. So, hold on. I want to copy and paste something into this email for you. All right. Sorry, I've had this email of all these bullet points I'm sending to you two next, so I'm not organized yet. Okay. So, confirming the close. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I'm trying to be a little emphatic on this. This is the moment of truth. If done properly, we're just merely locking up the contract everyone's already agreed to in the qualification process, right? This isn't the cheesy car salesman, you know, just sign here, sliding across the table. There is no cheesy car salesman paperwork. There is not a what's it going to be, yes or no kind of thing. All we're doing is we're agreeing to what we've already agreed to. So if done properly, we're merely locking up the contract. We're locking up the agreement we've already agreed to in the qualification process. It is possible for us to lose the donation or lose the sale at this point by making mistakes. We don't want to paint seagulls in their picture. We don't want to give them unnecessary new information. We don't want to do anything dishonest or make mistakes like we're misleading the prospect. We want to make sure that we're going to prevent any buyer's remorse or lose the sale or the donation to competition or an incumbent vendor. Normally, I say that one to salespeople about the competition or the incumbent vendor. If we get this far down the path and I know that they're talking to another vendor and I've agreed to have this meeting with them, we've gone through everything else, I'll flat out say to them, so what happens if XYZ comes in and says they'll do it for 10% cheaper? No, Chris, we know what we're gonna do. Okay, good. I make jokes like this all the time at those meetings. Hey, thank you for taking this meeting with me. It's so rare somebody comes in and tell me no face to face. You know, there's certain ways that you will have your own rapport in these. But as what we're looking to do, and as we look to do this participation, so this fulfillment step, we have certain criteria for closing them and using the fulfillment and post-sale steps. So you can look at this fulfillment step in one of two ways. It's either your reward for doing your job well, qualifying the prospect, presenting to them and having them move forward, or you're gonna get a no, and it's the agonizing price you pay for doing a poor job of qualifying the prospect. That's the tough love today. This goes in one of two ways. Either you get your reward, you get your donation, you've done your job, you've gotten your mission, you've gotten your donation, or you're gonna sit there agonizing and it's the price you pay for doing a poor job above the process. If you did a good job of covering pain, budget, and decision steps, and you've established a firm upfront contract for what the end of that meeting is, you should expect to get the donation. You should. You should expect to get the sponsorship. People don't like having to look you in the eyes and tell you no. If you have an upfront contract that says, at the end of this meeting, we're gonna get a yes or a no, as long as we meet all your needs, expect good news, okay? If you did a good job with pain, budget, and decision steps, and you have a good upfront contract, expect that you will get a decision that you want to hear. Because why would you get a no? You didn't dig deep enough and really understand what their pain is? Your mission, your product, your service didn't specifically and completely address what their needs were. You should have found that out in pain. If your sponsorship you're presenting, the donation you're asking for is a greater investment than they're willing to make, you should have found that out during budget. If you think that it's against your company or your mission's best interests to try to work with them, or if the right decision maker doesn't show up to the table, you should have found out about that in the decision-making process. If you did a good job in pain, budget, decision-making, and you already have answers to these, you should expect good news. So, during the fulfillment step, if you are making, the fulfillment step is the presentation. The fulfillment step is the ask. So if you have a solution that you're presenting, and I specifically keep going back to sponsorships, does your solution define and address the process or the prospect's pains? Does it address specifically what they are trying to accomplish? Does it specifically delivered at the prospect's budget? And is it consistent with their decision-making process? The right people, the right format, the right timing, who, what, where, why, and how. If you do all this, it'll prevent buyer's remorse. If you do all this, it'll prevent the loss of the sale to competitors. And if you do this, it will then establish an ultimate upfront contract about what happens next. Again, we have a solution that solved their pain. We have a solution that fits their budget. We have a solution that fits their decision-making process. And we're now closing for the ultimate upfront contract. David Sandler used that term, the ultimate contract, or ultimate upfront contract. Because you established before this meeting an upfront contract about what will take place, who will be there, what you'll discuss, and at the end of that meeting, you're getting a yes or a no. A little bit of tough love in there, right? This is that wimp juncture. Do you wimp out and not talk about timing of when you expect the donation by? Do you wimp out and let them show up without a decision maker? Do you wimp out and not talk specifically about the specific dollar amount that you're going to be asking for? These are the questions that you have to have upfront pain budget decision making before you have this meeting. So here's the bad news. Sometimes you get a no. Okay? Here are the three primary causes of losing a sale. You were given inaccurate information. That inaccurate information could be regarding the prospect's needs, wants, or problems. It could be intentional. They could have tried to mislead you. Could have been a complete accident. Could have been they thought they knew what they knew and they didn't know. Sometimes you're given inaccurate information. Sometimes you could have done a better job to ask more questions to clarify that. You will learn from mistakes. It happens. Okay? Sometimes circumstances have changed. I learned the hard way 2 weeks ago to say at the start of every fulfillment meeting, has anything changed since we last spoke? Turns out it had. They had set aside $10,000 for training. It was their slush fund. What I didn't know was that their electrical panel, back where they do all of their work, had exploded, and they now needed to come up with $12,000 to replace the electrical panel. Where did that money come from? Anywhere they could find it. Their training budget paid for a new electrical panel. It wasn't a no, Chris, we don't want to hire you. It had to be a not right now. But I had to close the file and move on because they were no longer qualified. They didn't have the budget. I didn't clarify that. So get used to saying stuff like that. Has anything changed since we last spoke? Especially with your donors, husband and wives. Oh yeah, Jim got laid off. Oh shit. Right? Well, yeah, actually our daughter no longer goes to that school. Oh, you know, you need to ask, clarify if something has changed. And sometimes the prospect has not been honest with you. It happens, unfortunately. And it even happens in nonprofits. Sometimes people are not always honest with you. So there are certain mistakes you can use to avoid to figure these out prior to the fulfillment step. If you're not clearly reviewing the ultimate contract, pain, budget, decision, we're going to get a yes or no at this meeting. If you're not being specific enough about pain, budgets, or decisions, if you rush through the pain step, you hear a high-level pain, you don't ask more and more questions to find out their personal pain or the business pain. If you're not specifically dealing with all budget issues. That was my mistake when I lost that one. You have $10,000 put aside for training. Great. Can this money be used for anything else? I didn't ask that question. Their answer should have been, well, it's not specifically just our training budget. It's kind of our investment to reinvest in the company budget. Okay, so what happens if something comes up that needs to take that money away? Well, it really depends on what it is. I should have asked those questions and I didn't. And again, what if you're not clearly defining their prospect's decision-making process? Who needs to be there? So we always talk about the Sandler rules. If you wait until the presentation to close the sale, you put too much pressure on the prospect and yourself. If you wait until the presentation, close the sale, you put too much pressure on yourself. What that specifically means is you should have disqualified them well before this. You should be expecting the right information. I'm trying to find this specific one. I'm not seeing it. All right, I will find it. All right, here it is. This is one of those times when it's story time, and I'm going to read this to you guys. If you've gotten this far without disqualifying the prospect and without being disqualified by the prospect, the only option left is to close the sale to get the donation, right? That's because in the process of uncovering the prospect's pain, the process picked up on your expertise, your sincere interest, and most importantly, on the fit between your product and service and his needs, or your mission and their pain. You don't have to establish any of that during your formal presentation. You don't need to keep asking questions about pain. During the budget step, you discover that the price tag attached to the solution you will present is within the prospect's budget. Again, you've talked about third-party things like normally a sponsorship would be between $5,000 and $10,000. Is that involved in, is that within the price you normally invest? Normally we're looking for a donation between $1,000 and $5,000. You've given them some of these third-party stories from these examples. During your presentation, you won't have to justify the cost of your solution or worry about sending the prospect into sticker shock. They already know what the pricing is. They already know what the number is. During the decision step, you found out what the people involved in the decision process need to see and hear from you in order to make a decision. If you have the right decision makers at the table and you understand their who, what, where, when, why, and how, there's no surprises. Therefore, you can focus on those issues and elements. You won't have to present every facet of your product and service and hope that some of them hit the mark. You know the pain, you know the budget, you know the decision-making process. And if you've already established an upfront contract about what will take place during that presentation, in effect, the contract should state that you will make a presentation and the prospect will give you a yes or a no decision. This is the ultimate contract.
Is the presentation proposal part always necessary or always expected to happen?
What do you mean by that?
Like, I think, like, for example, I can imagine, like, okay, when you're meeting with an individual, do you always, like, show up with a proposal? Like, I think of, like, proposals and presentations for, like, foundations or corporations or things like that, where there's, like, several people in the room having to make that decision, laying out, maybe those people weren't in every single meeting with the person you originally started talking to. So you're kind of like, this is the amount of money we're asking for. These are the programs it could go towards based off of what you've told me. Like that kind of thing. Okay, yeah, that's a presentation. That's like some sort of proposal. But do you walk into every like individual donor with like a proposal, or that's what you ask them? That's what you ask them what they like, do they want?
Let me make sure that I'm clarifying this, Laurel. Your question is, if I said to you, or if you said to me, hey, Chris, let's schedule a meeting for you and me and Anne Marie. so that the three of us could make a decision, are you not going to ask questions to her? I guess what I want to make sure is that we're looking at this as we have an ultimate outcome. We have a clear next step at the end of every meeting. So if the clear next step of our phone call is that the three of us are going to sit down, me, you, Anne Marie, you're going to have to go through pain, budget, and decision-making with Anne Marie as well. And maybe in that meeting, you get enough information that you give us the ultimate upfront contract to give us a presentation at that table. You have everything you need. She and I can be on the same page. You move to close. Great. If at that meeting that we've now brought Anne Marie in, we uncover more things that need to be addressed, there's budget questions that Anne Marie has brought up that aren't part of what you planned on discussing. Her pain is different than my pain, and we're not sure if it's the right solution. Or now she says this all sounds great, but we want to make sure our CF or our financial planner is in on this. Then don't present at that meeting. The next step is the next meeting. At that meeting is the formal presentation.
Where you review everything. And does that presentation always like, I don't know, I feel like presenting to like an individual is kind of like
Completely different than presenting to a corporation.
so it might not be like, look at my cool PowerPoint or my cool proposal in this document. It might just be like laying it out like.
I'm going to give you a specific, again, example. You and I talk on the phone. I say, this sounds good, but we need to bring Anne Marie into the conversation. You say, great, let's the three of us meet. Now you go through reviewing what we talked about. You talk to Anne Marie about pain, budget, decision-making. If you clearly realize that at the end of this meeting, we're not ready for a decision, don't make a proposal.
Right.
Don't sit down. I mean, have your PowerPoint and your slides and everything in your back pocket, assuming that if that meeting goes forward, we can then move to the decision-making step with a one-on-one conversation with a donor, husband and wife. But if you're going to, if you're not going to get a decision at the end of that presentation, there's no point in making the presentation.
Right.
If you're not going to get a decision at the end of that presentation, there is no point in making the presentation. I'll say it a third time. If you're not going to get a decision at the end of the presentation, don't make the presentation. If the prospect is not willing and able, or able and willing to fulfill their part of the upfront contract, then you don't have to fulfill your end of the agreement either.
So then in that in that example, you would say like based off of what we talked about today, let's meet again where I can put together a proposal for you and we will go through that proposal to make a final decision.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's always like a proposal, like always like a paper or a document or a presentation. It's like you always have something you're bringing. Because sometimes I think of like and maybe this just isn't part of it because just for Sandler, but like I know I closed deals without putting together this huge proposal. Okay, this is what we're doing. It's just like, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, here's the check.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure we take a step back on this. A formal presentation, don't think of it as a tangible item. It's not a PowerPoint, it's not a brochure, it's not a flyer. The formal presentation is, we review pain, budget, decision-making. Your pain can be solved by my solution, my mission. Your budget is in line with my cost, sponsorship, giving levels. Your fulfillment, you've got the right decision makers at the table. That's the presentation.
Okay. Okay.
We are reviewing pain, budget, and decision. That's the presentation. You might have documentation that goes along with it being a PowerPoint. But normally when I sell sales training, I'm not bringing copies of the book saying, you'll get 10 of these.
Right.
And,
right,
you know,
right.
I'll go over general things. You'll get access to the Sandler e-learning library for a full year and all of our online courses. You'll have monthly coaching sessions with me. You know, I know what goes into my fulfillment, part of my presentation when we're talking about the dollars and cents.
Okay. I'm good now.
Okay. So the post-sell steps when we're actually, you know, in this, let me think about this. there's really one more big part of this where we actually talk about the elements of where we are in here and preventing buyer's remorse. Even if I took an extra 5 minutes, I wouldn't get through all this. There's a couple extra steps in here. So here's what we're gonna do. All right, 3 of us, email chain. We're gonna figure out whether the next Tuesday, 11 to 1, because we know Laurel can't make it. We're gonna find 2.5 hours sometime next week. We're gonna put a couple extra minutes towards this. We're gonna make sure we go through IR theory. We're gonna make sure we go through prospect and the cookbook. And the 3 of us commit that we're giving that 150 minutes to cover all of this. It's just not Tuesday, 11 to 1. Deal?
Yeah.
Good deal.
Okay. Because I think that Laurel is looking at this as the presentation needs to be in a nice plastic binder with nice calligraphy, with a clear, call to action, or it has to be a PowerPoint or a video. Fulfillment, that presentation is just the actual conversation in front of the ultimate upfront contract.
Right.
And there's things that I'm going to teach you, the thermometer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that we solve this? Oh, it's a 9. Well, if it's a 9, let's just call it a 1. If you're not at a 10, why are we moving forward? There's a certain part of the questioning strategy we can roll back on. Thank you for letting me play Big Brother as well and ask you guys some stuff about that. I hope I didn't strike a nerve or I was out of line. I want to make sure I protect your two's okayness. But I was curious and wanted to make sure I was asking.
I
Okay.
appreciate it. It's good
All
to
right.
talk to people outside. Sorry, people from different viewpoints and stuff. So,
Yeah.
anyways.
All right. Both of you have Dr. Sarah's email. Send her an email. Tell her you miss her. Give her a guilt trip. I'm recording these and she's watching these, but she needs a guilt trip.
Okay.
All right, guys. Call me. Text me if you need anything. But we'll get an email chain going on when we're going to reschedule for next week. Maybe this is good too. If we pull it out from Tuesday 11 to 1, we can get Dr. Sarah back on when she's not seeing patients.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Any other day.
Thank you.
We'll make it work. See ya.
Okay. Bye.